is the Two Marketeers podcast, where hosts and marketing experts Sean Patrick and Lindsay Waugh seek to uncover what makes brands so powerful in how they impact modern society and culture.
Two Marketeers. They've got a podcast. The Two Marketeers podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Two Marketeers podcast.
I'm Sean Patrick.
And I'm Lindsay Waugh.
Continuing on this season's theme of designing experiences, Lindsay and I are talking about designing our work experience.
More the personal side. So our point of view on how we've designed our work lives. And so this is really the first episode in season 4 that dives into more of that personal side around how we've each designed the way that we work and live.
Comparing life pre-freelance and post-freelance. Have a listen. It's a good one. Oh, one more thing before we jump in. I make reference to lemurs jumping off a cliff. I meant lemmings. Please note that no animals were harmed during the recording of this episode. Enjoy.
What are we talking about? Designing experiences. Here we are.
Okay, so I do want to talk a little more about designing our own experience. Let's talk a little bit about how you design your experience, Lindsay.
I feel like I'm in therapy.
Right?
Is there a couch in here?
Yeah. No.
I have to lay down. So childhood
Lindsay,
trauma.
You seem so... Yeah, let's not talk about trauma. Tell me about, say, Lindsay, the full-timer at an agency kind of thing, the strategist, the superstar, big brands, look at me, young kids, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And you now.
Yeah.
4, how many years ago?
Yes.
3, 4?
4 years, yeah. I blew up my whole life at that time 4 years ago when we started this podcast, actually.
Well, not
so I
for
blame
this
you.
podcast. Yeah, it can blame me, but not for this podcast.
I blame you in many ways for a lot of that I've done wrong. Or perhaps right,
Wow.
I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm crazy because I left my dream job. I was in my dream job. I had gotten to, like you said earlier, where you peaked very early and got to the only place you ever wanted to get to.
Right.
That's where I got to. I had 2 little kids. I had my dream job at a dream agency.
So it was my fault.
I was,
I'm so sorry.
working on global brands, doing super cool shit. And I loved it. So I don't think I woke up one day and was like, I'm miserable. I wasn't. I was great.
I feel sick to my stomach right now.
Why?
Because I'm the one.
I was great, but what I've now learned is busy and bored.
Huh.
So that is
Can we pause on that?
To me. Yeah.
You didn't know it at the time?
I didn't know that was a thing. I still get like that. Busy and bored. I can't sit still mentally. So even though my daily life was very fast paced, I was doing very similar things, talking to the same people, going to the same place where you're
You got comfortable.
Yeah, very quickly too, though. It was I wasn't even there very long, a couple of years. And then I shouldn't have been bored because it's this is going to be the fastest pace you've ever run in your life.
This is why we have video.
And you're going to get fired in 5 seconds. You better get ready. Never eat food, only drink coffee. That's what you have to do. And I was kind of really though? I was busy. I was working a lot. I was working late. I was running around doing pickup, doing drop off, going for dinner, blah, blah, blah. But I was
living the life you dreamed of.
I was living it. And I was just bored at the same time where I was if I have to write another brief,
They're exhausting.
And for what though? The way that, and you're in a machine.
Yeah.
And I'm just, like I said earlier, where I'm just always asking, but why are we doing that? Why are we doing it this way? And why are we doing that specifically? And so
And so many meetings.
And so many. And I loved all of that. I was like hanging out with people, wearing cool clothes. Like, I love
Wearing
it.
cool clothes, yeah.
Put my lipstick
Been
on.
there.
Like, it's my jam, totally. And I still love agencies. I love agency life. I would never not say I don't like it. I do love it.
Right.
But then I was just like, I am too restless and like curious for this situation that I'm in right now. And like I was like, I needed to know what happens on the client side, like after you set a plan in place. Like when we're not held responsible, right? Like we are, but we're not, And so
like from a strategy standpoint.
And from an agency standpoint, like you're not the one at the end of the day who's counting the sales, of the brand, right? So like I needed to look at different problems. I needed to talk to different people. I needed to think about it from the client side. I needed to so just get some variety is like, that's why I did it, was like, I need to shake this up. And then.
Was it not because your favorite person in the industry begged you to consider?
Well, that was the first cool thing where you're like, well, should we do this crazy ask together? And we're like, what is this? What are we going to do? And that's the best thing.
Right. Like it was like, we'll do it.
That's what I always do now. I'm like, what is this? And what are we going to do? It's like the first questions I ask, and I never know. And it's so vulnerable, and it's what I'm best at. Like, I'm not good with monotony, even if it's exciting. If it's the same, but exciting, it's still not good for me.
I think it's so funny because, so to wrap that is, what's the key difference in your life working for yourself?
Yeah.
I'd call you an entrepreneur because you have businesses. You're not just freelance is the structure, but you have businesses. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between being busy and bored? What are you now?
I am more thoughtfully invested, I would say. Like I think freelancers and consultants are only as good as their current perspective in their last job. Like you're always trying to be the best, proving yourself, because like you are trying to show up as the best advisor that could be helping them solve their problems. So I think instead of being lost in a team, instead of repeating the same thing, all that stuff, I'm trying to show up for my clients as my best every day. And that sounds super cheesy, but like that's what I'm trying to do. And I just find that I'm like so invested in the projects that I work on and the clients that I take. And I feel one of the biggest things too is I feel a responsibility to say the right thing that's going to move their business forward. And that's where some of like the radical candor comes from. It's like if I don't tell you exactly what I think you need to do, even if you're not going to like it,
right?
Your business isn't going to change. It's not going to succeed. It's not going to grow. Whereas in like a big team environment, you're almost afraid to push too far, too much. Because
there's a lot of mouths to feed on that.
Totally. And like you could get fired. We could lose a client. We could do this. We could do that. Now I'm like, I feel such a responsibility to just tell them what they need to do in the most respectful way that is going to like help them move forward. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. So
to take it back, that's such a great perspective to have, because it comes back to the thing that's you said at first way back that scared me with 10% sales is you also have to take the accountability of how you share it, because you won't be like, well, whether they like it or not. Like you created a business called Tough Love. Mm-hmm. And it's that idea that I take accountability not only for the strategies I define, but how I communicate the challenges that they may not be ready to hear in ways that they're most likely to embrace or even accept what I've found. Yeah. That's different than come up with an idea, sell it. Totally. And I think it might be like, we're trying to engage Gen Z because we want to be a cool liquor brand. And it's like, do you know that 45-year-old men in Nova Scotia are your top consumer? Like, what are we going to do about this? And they're like, what? And you're like, well, this is what's actually happening with your business. Right. So like, we need to figure this out if you need to get to different places. So metaphorically, you're like that person who's at the precipice of a cliff trying to raise the flag for a few of the lemurs. Is it lemurs that
You just run off?
Yeah. Right? You're kind of like, sorry, before you do that, has anyone? Yeah.
But I'm like, we can make this bet. Like, I'm so passionate about it because I was like, we can change this. We can do this. If we look at this properly and address the reality and then put something exciting in place to change it. Whereas a lot of like when you're on bulky teams and stuff like that, you can't be like, excuse me, like this isn't the right thing to do. People are like, what? Like we're all running towards the same thing, you know?
Well, I think again, from being in an agency environment, which I agree, there's nothing like the energy and the vibe of a well-run, respected agency.
Yes.
The one thing about agency, not about agencies themselves, but what the agency does is it makes money by pulling the best people together to execute the work. And the cost of that and markup is how they build that business. The challenge I have in, again, not agencies, but where I pulled out was it's not the best value in a lot of cases because of the model is you'll always get the client who says in the end, but I'm paying for this. I want this. So you can't be that person. You can't be the Lindsay. You don't
want that. And you're like, what?
Yeah, is to say, okay, that's great for the next 3 months, but if you don't start fixing talking to these guys in Nova Scotia, there's a good chance you're fucked.
Well, so I work with agencies still all the time. I would say probably 50% of the time. Right. And I think they also maybe even more so sometimes appreciate that you're not doing the right thing. Like someone who can come in and be like, I'm an objective point of view and say like, we need to do this other thing or shake this up, or a creative needs to be like this way, and be like the same type of advisor to agencies where they need to get stirred up, right? And get excited. And they are a lot of the times like a cog in the machine, and that's hard for creativity and things like that.
Right.
So can I ask you the same question?
What was the question? I don't even... Yeah.
Compared to where you were when you were an employee
I've been
versus,
to so many places.
Where you are now, what's the difference in the way that you've designed how you work?
Well, my story is interesting. Yeah. My story is kind of interesting because the last place I was full time was a wonderful place, but I had burned out. And so I have a lot to learn. And it was about, what was I doing, looking at it as a designer? What was I doing wrong? And I had gotten sucked into this thing I hate, the whole work-life balance, because I don't believe it's a thing. I don't think they're on level planes.
Never going to be a thing. Work
is part of life. And I say the main thing was I had become a very bad designer of my life. I had made it all about work. And when work wasn't working for me, everything I just worked harder at it. So it was just this sort of, the strategy was gone in me, and the design, I had designed my life around work, because that's what you do when you have young kids. You do all those sort of things. And look at me, look how busy I am. The plate spinner, right? Look at me. Then now I have taken a lot of time to design work around my life. And what that is making decisions of, hey, people, if you do it right, you're not going to have to make the money you make for the rest of your life. And it's allowed me to kind of, and the funny thing is when you leave a full-time job and you're paid very well, the first thing you think of, well, I'm either going to make this much, which is what I make because I'm comfortable that way, or we're going to starve. There's no in between, right?
That was how I defined success early on. It was like, if I make $1 more than what I made there, I'm all right. Like, you know?
Exactly, right? And then you realize, well, wait a minute, I don't even have to make what I made there.
Right.
Because it's a whole different structure. And I have all this time now. And oh my God. So when I created Wise Guy, which is really just about a brand that really hasn't officially launched because it's my brand. It was me making that pivot to say, what's the work I want to do? What's the work I want to be known for doing? And how do I want that work to make me feel? And money can't be in the mix. Money will be the result, because that's what you learn enough is to say, you do good work, you're good at what you do, you're a good person.
You will have money.
You will have money.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, and you've heard this from me many times, I only do work I want to do. And that doesn't mean like it's nonprofit. It doesn't mean that. It means, like you said, this is a problem I would love to be part of figuring out, right? This is just in a package, and boy, I can't wait to dig deeper.
Yeah.
So it has to be work that I want to do just for the work itself.
Yep.
It has to be a value to me. So what do I get out of this? Right? What do I look back and say, what did I learn from this? And last but not least is I need to be of value to the outcome. So the people hiring me need to know what I bring.
Yes.
Especially in my case, because sometimes it'll be like, okay, there's a problem. Boom. You know what happens. Oh, we have to change. We have to do something in a month and we need this written. It's like, okay, well, I can do all that. I used to pretend that.
You couldn't?
No, I used to pretend that I had people.
Oh, I'll get them to do it.
Right?
I'll get someone to whip up that logo.
Because we do have Patrick Pierducci. But anyways, so it's been about in the journey is the answer is I have consciously designed the experience I am living. But it's about if you're not liking your experience, you're the designer. Figure it out.
I would also say is like the way that we're talking about it sounds super easy and fun. It's not always.
Who's they?
Like if anyone listening to this might be like, this sounds really luxurious. Like we design how we do our projects however we
only
want.
do what I want.
Sometimes it sucks, folks. Like
it mostly sucks.
There's also projects you take that like there may be some sort of value to you in it, but it might not be the most fun thing you're going to do. And that it's easy to just quit your job and walk away and hope the money will come. Like none of that's easy, of course. Yeah. But I feel like
it's mindset.
We're talking about it like it's so
you're right. No,
luxurious. It is a privilege to be able to do it, but
yes. And last week I was a mess because I was like, I don't have anything tangible lined up for the next 2 or 3 months. And then boom, it is constant angst, except your mindset is different.
Yeah.
You have the freedom of being a Lindsay and saying, why? Or being a Sean and challenging and say, I know this is a rule, but is this a rule for the benefit? Is this a truth for me? I get I'm supposed to be available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
But why?
Right.
So I think where we are today, like post-pandemic and all that stuff, someone like Lindsay is like just on the prowl. Like she is questioning everything.
Yeah.
I'm questioning the rules that don't work anymore. And why those both work really well together is because what I do in the creation of ideas or execution is they have to work. Lindsay's job is to go out there and make sense of what will even work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way of saying it.
That was good, eh? Yeah. Wise guy.
Wise guy. Stay tuned.
Wiseguy.ca.
Stay tuned for more.
That's it. I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. Two Marketeers out. Thanks for listening to the Two Marketeers podcast. New episodes launch every 2 weeks.
Find the Two Marketeers podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you like to listen. And be sure to rate and subscribe.
Listen on our website, thetwomarketeers.ca, or you can ask Alexa to play the Two Marketeers podcast.
Want to keep in touch? Follow the Two Marketeers on LinkedIn or at Two Marketeers on TikTok. We've always got something to share.
This podcast is over.